You've interviewed people before, right? You've kind of been on the other side of this.
Yeah. Quite a few times on both sides of it.
Kind of for zines and stuff, you were interviewing people, or was it like documentaries, or?
Yeah, I mean, haven't really done a zine since the early '90s. I'm kind of dating myself.
Zines are still a
But
thing. Zines are still going.
oh yeah, no, I totally still pick them up and still grab things. Depending on what they are. I just personally haven't really done it in that capacity. And then I've interviewed people for like, most recently, like kind of like for books. I'm working on a book, but like I've done it for other people's books. Like, they're like kind of art books, and they've asked for like a conversation with someone. So I've done those kind of things, and then I've done like kind of live Q&A things at film screenings and book launches and various other things.
How is the book coming? It's a book about an art collective, right?
Yeah. It's about this art collective. The loosest term of the word collective. It's conceptually collective, but drastically different in its members. A group called the Schimpflucht Group started in Switzerland. They all kind of live in different places now, but it's coming along. I was like really plowing away at it, and then the pandemic happened, and then a close friend of mine, who I also like kind of manage and now manage their estate, had passed away right when the pandemic kicked in. So I've been this whole year or last year got shot. So I kind of couldn't work on it as much as I wanted to, or kind of, do the kind of research I had planned on doing in 2020. So I actually was just kind of going through notes last night for it, and going through images that one of the members had sent me last year. So I'm hoping in the next couple of months I can really dig back in, and when we're allowed to travel again, I'll kind of be able to dive in. But trying to get a bunch of other things off my plate right now, so I can just like to give all my attention to it and focus solely on it.
So you're still kind of at the stage where you're collecting all the various kind of interviews and material and amassing everything.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people to speak with, even though the core members aren't that many, but a lot of people collaborated with them or worked with them. I have to do a kind of a realizing, when you do these kind of things, I'm not just sort of researching those people or the people they worked with, but people involved in the environment around them. So I'm like kind of diving into socio-political, I guess, strife that was going on in Switzerland in the late '70s, early '80s, which as an American, I was not aware of. When you think of Switzerland, you just think, oh,
Peace.
banking, yeah, and
Chocolate.
neutrality, like, yeah, chocolate, expensive wristwatches. You don't really think of, and plus, I wasn't obviously around then. I was born in the late '70s in around here, so I can't really speak to what was going on there.
What was the strife? Because as someone who's from Scotland and also slightly
I
unaware.
guess the typical shit that happens everywhere. It's just classism. There is a domineering but yet very small upper class. An elite class, which I guess is the show pony for the country. But underneath is a lot of societal problems, like really massive, drug problem, opiate problem, as far as I know, still happening. But definitely there at that time was really bad, I guess. And this might be more of a European thing, is over there, from like what I see as an outsider, as an American looking over there, when things really bubble over, when the kind of working class or the lower classes just fucking had it, they are not afraid to really fucking riot. Like, they're not afraid to just take it back, or at least try to attempt to get at least something. And that was certainly what was happening there. There was riots there every 3-4 years, and these riots were pretty significant. One of them, essentially, they were trying to get money for like a community center, like social programs, things like that, basic basic things. And what the government did was blow all the money on yeah, I wouldn't say blow all the money, but essentially they've directed funds to build a new opera house for the, fancy rich people to enjoy the opera. So what they did during these one riots was they just took over the opera house. They pretty much laid siege and, barricaded in there because that opera house was a giant glaring symbol of like a big fuck you to the working class, essentially. And they knew it would be, and they didn't care and built it anyways. And everyone was like, how about fuck you? We'll just take it over. And all they wanted was a goddamn like community center, so like something real, and a couple social programs to be funded instead of cuts, And so there was things like that. You can't help but be a product of that, in my opinion. And so I'm looking into a lot of that, and a lot of all the members are just, the generation just after, I guess here we call them baby boomers, but, post World War II, Switzerland was in the thick of it. They were you're right in the middle, and kind of skirted around, but had to deal with the kind of cleanup afterwards, when it came to, who was hiding what and what banking, and it got very complicated. So to try and dive into these people and their creative work, and, it's strange, and it's definitely provocative, but it didn't just show up out of nowhere. And I mean, that's how like you got the Vienna Actionists and stuff like that. I mean, these are a direct result of essentially World War II and the fallout. And so you can't be all that surprised.
They were a neutral zone in the war, right? So everyone kind of put their money there
Yeah.
because they viewed it as a safe
Mm-hmm.
place. So is that what kind of fueled this, or I guess kind of widened maybe the class gap a little bit?
Probably. I mean, I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I mean, they're definitely known, or at least were known. Now it's, I think people, because money is a much different thing. Commerce is a
Digitized.
much different thing than it was now. Yeah. So we're talking like Cayman Islands and Panama and stuff now. But then it was, yeah, the it was always the Swiss bank account. I don't hear that term used so much anymore. But when I was a kid, or even up until like maybe 20 years ago, you always heard about he's some rich guy. When you hear of someone hiding money or doing something sketchy financially, oh, they got a Swiss bank account. Oh, he's always got all these Swiss bank accounts, and that was like a term. That was a thing. That was always like, oh, he's got these Swiss bank accounts. Oh, he's hiding money to not pay taxes and everything. Then there was always things where there was tons of like Nazi gold and Nazi monies that were like kind of pilfered, and when they wanted to kind of channel it through to use on the kind of world market, it was always through Swiss bank accounts. And so a lot of reparations and stuff after World War II was kind of going after Swiss bank accounts, but then the Swiss would, play, oh, what are you talking about? We're not involved. And it's like, well, you're definitely can be an accomplice to these things. And so, yeah, when massive worldwide banking is your known export, and luxury goods, on, below that, for a tiny country, you're going to have, the people at the top, and then kind of everyone else, because what else is there left for everyone? I don't have all the answers to like, all of it, because I'm just starting. I'm myself just learning a lot about all this stuff and kind of forming my opinions. But yeah, they definitely have a huge problem with those kind of things. But then again, what country doesn't?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a feeling Switzerland is the same as the UK in that they never really had a revolution, and there's a weird kind of class tension created as a result of that. Every country obviously has their class issues, but it's almost kind of emphasized when you haven't had an outlet for it at
Yeah,
any
and
point in
I never
history.
thought of that. I never really thought of that. That the last, I guess, revolution in the UK was 400 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I've tried learning about that one, and I, to save my life, cannot figure out the English Revolution. because it was like there wasn't two sides of it, there was like it was like literally 5-6 people vying to be king, and so, and I'm just like, wait, what, who's doing what? And like,
It was a
I was like,
religious thing, right? Wasn't it? Kind of Catholic
yeah,
versus
yeah.
Protestantism. Yeah.
But it turned into that, but then it turned into, even within that, factions started to be like, yeah, fuck these guys, I'm doing my own thing. And I'm like, wow. And it got very complicated. And I was like, I cannot follow this. I don't know what the hell happened, But yeah, like, you have like, like in France and Spain and Italy to an extent, after it was unified, all over the place. But yeah, they never, I don't, yeah, I guess they never really had that kind of that moment that I'm aware of.
I don't know if we'll see another revolution in the same way either. It feels quite constricted now.
Yeah, everyone's very pacified, even if everything that's going on is not in their own best interest. There's a lot to distract people, and I'm guilty of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's that whole idea that if you want to try and control a population, you don't use brute force, you just give them pleasure. You give them fucking Netflix
Yeah,
or whatever.
I just rolled out of 4 years of of insanity here, and I feel like the past 2 days have been like, oh boy, you know what I mean? Like, wow, okay, but doesn't mean anyone's out of the woods.
Has there been quite a
It's just,
palpable mood change in the States?
mm, ye- uh, yes, but that is because I live in New York City, and that it is a bubble. Because whenever I go into the rest of the country, it's it's a wake up, it's a culture shock. You're like, oh shit, like, okay, like, like the entire Midwest is another fucking planet. Like, parts of it are really scary. Like, that are like I would never go to. And it's terrifying. To be to be a person not, where whatever, be from there or whatever. Yeah, I spent actually this summer. I had spent a few months staying in Las Vegas. That was definitely eye opening to seeing how other people think about politics and everything like that, or what's important, or what they choose to believe, and even on like a political city level, like on how they deal with the place. It was kind of insane. It was really crazy, and I'm still like, wow, holy shit. And then I realized, yeah, I live in New York City. It's much different here. People's attitudes much different, and I guess the people I surround myself with generally share my, I guess, opinion. Yeah, I guess it's fair to say.
I mean, as much as it can be painful to do that, it's also a healthy thing to kind of give yourself a bit of perspective and see how you fit into the kind of bigger picture and puzzle.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't regret peek my nose in there to see what's going on over here. Horrifying when I saw it, but I saw it. Like, I definitely, I can't be like, I don't get it. I definitely lived in the thick of it, for a few months, and it was like, okay, I mean, I get it, don't agree with it, but I acknowledge that it's there, and there's a lot of work that's got to be done, and then not to so much change people's minds, but because you're not going to do that. You can bark at people all you want, and you're not going to change their mind. It's I think change within kind of people is, it's a bit of a long game. It's a slow burn kind of thing, and they have to come to it on their own terms, and for whatever that is, whatever causes it. Sometimes it's a tragedy that causes it, or something within their family, or or they never do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I was speaking to a guy on the podcast a couple months back, maybe 6 weeks ago or something, who was saying that in every other point in history when there's been a dramatic kind of social change, it's usually caused by violence. It's
Oh,
usually caused
absolutely.
by this big
100.
event.
And like you said, it's like in like Western countries, do you see that so much? I mean, I think a couple of weeks ago, a kind of fringe group of crazy people sort of stormed the Capitol. And at first you're like, oh my God, that's insane. And then, I was kind of thinking about it, being like, well, I'm glad that kind of happened, because now because then it finally got some of these people that were enabling this like shitty behavior of, Trump and people like that. People, he would just do the most insane things, and people would just go, "That's awful," and not do anything about it. And I'm like, "Yeah, can someone stop this, please? Like, can someone step in here, and drive the car? Like, because no one's driving the car right now." And finally, when that happened, it finally got a lot of people that were kind of making excuses for the guy, and kind of finally went, all right, we've had enough. This guy's got to go. Like, and now he's getting put on trial and everything like that. And I'm like, good, finally. So it would have been nice if this happened a couple years ago, but I guess better late than never. But yeah, that was kind of like, oh my God, these violence that happened at the Capitol. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's just no one else was taking notice whenever the other bullshit that was happening. So it took a flashpoint like that. So yeah.
Well, even McConnell kind of turned against him after that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wouldn't have seen that coming.
It's shocking. No, I didn't see it coming either. I mean, McConnell's a real
Evil
rotten,
human being.
evil, nasty human being. Like, across the board, he's a truly
He looks like Emperor
person.
Palpatine. He's got that kind of atmosphere about him.
Yeah. He doesn't give a fuck I don't even think he gives a fuck even really about Republicans either. He like sure doesn't care. He's just like nasty. It got him to flip, and it's like no one twisted his arm on that. He's like, fuck, because he's now the danger is right on the front door, and it happened firsthand. So there's definitely a lot of work that's got to get done in this place. Right now, I'm just taking it day by day, and would like to be able to go to a restaurant again or something, So I'm just kind of looking forward to
get back to life.
Yeah, get back to life, because it's been almost a year now. It's insane to think. I literally was quoted as saying, this will only be a couple weeks. So wrong there.
I think everyone was the same though. We were the same here. We got put into a 3-week lockdown, and we were like, "Oh yeah, it'll be like 6 at most."
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like 2 months most, but it'll be really good. We're just gonna lock down for 2 months, get this thing under control. And stupidly, I was just like, there's people in charge of this stuff, right? You got like.
I mean, arguably, it could have been a couple months if we had done things right.
Right, exactly. Probably would have. And I again foolishly thought, well, there's people have jobs that handle these kind of things, but nope, there wasn't. There's no adults. We have no adults in charge. Okay, so here we are.
Would you classify yourself as like a collector in life? I seem to see that you have a pretty sizable kind of vinyl collection and a lot of kind of art you've managed to amass over the years too.
I wouldn't say why, if I was to introduce myself, it was like, because there are people that definitely are like, oh, I'm an art collector or whatever. I'm definitely not that. And
it's a passion.
But yeah, it's I definitely get rid of things, and I don't do it for any kind of real. I feel like actual serious art collectors are. This is like on people on the kind of major scale. A lot of it is they're almost like bankers, like it's investments, and they toy with it like that, like it's a tool. It's just this is the commodity they're choosing to sort of trade in, and that's not everyone. There's some people that are just into it or whatever. Whenever I pick things up, I'm definitely got a very specific way. If we're just talking about artwork, I definitely have I'm trying to think of the best way to word it. I have a very specific way I kind of go about it, or like what I'm picking up. It's fairly focused. I'm not going to pay like some kind of crazy money for something at some auction. You know what I mean? I mean, if it was directly from the artist, that's a different story. But the things I get by people that are no longer here, or I don't know, or whatever, is like, I'm definitely, if you know where to look, you wouldn't believe the kind of deals you can get, and that's not by being, cunning or, smarmy or anything like that. It's just like art dealers and art galleries, as much as they'll never admit it to you, they're a store. They sell things, and they have an inventory. It's just not always on. It's not all on display, and they have storage facilities filled with prints and all. And if that stuff's just sitting around, if it doesn't like kind of get unloaded right away, a lot of that stuff just gets kind of unloaded, and then estate sales kind of happen. And when there's certain collections of artwork, I know certain kind of people that deal in just that kind of stuff. And art, like anything else, goes in trends. Stuff that would have been huge 10 years ago in certain things, might no one gives a shit, like, like five,
Yeah,
ten
it's
years
like
later,
fashion.
because it's exactly like in fashion. You'd be shocked as to what you can get. And I mean, I'm not trying to get like a like a Gerhard Richter painting, but you can get like a signed, print and stuff like that, signed, and there's like an edition of 50 or 100 for a reasonable price, and it's from his studio. It's not like it's not like a poster. It's like sometimes you play your cards right, you can get like a Brian Geisen kind of thing for not a ton of money. For what people probably spend on records in a month, you wouldn't believe the kind of stuff, the kind of artwork you could pick up, and even for less than $100, like, oh, cool, $80, $100, you can get some like Dieter Rowe thing or something, an original, like, and so, and then, because like I think people, see that you're like picking up artwork, or whatever, and they instantly think, ooh, fancy or anything. It's like, no, actually, like, I'm probably spending less money than how another person spends on records or going out drinking or drugs or whatever they spend their money on in a month. I just choose to budget it differently. Like, I have a job and everything, so it's, I'm just like, well, I'm certainly not going out to eat right now, so I'm not going out to restaurants, so you know rather buy that. And records is just kind of, I've always been into records. I mean, that kind of what part of led me to eventually putting out records. So that's just been piling up since I was a teenager, so that's kind of nothing new.
Yeah, I was speaking to someone else the other day who was thinking about getting into records, but was speaking about how it cost, quite a bit of money to kind of invest in it. And I was saying it just takes time. You build it up over the
Yeah,
years.
yeah. So they're looking at it like they weren't picking it. So were they thinking about it like they never were picking up records,
They've
and then
never
they're
bought
just
records
like,
before. They were thinking about starting. I was like, it just seems like quite a costful hobby. And I was like, you just buy a record a week, for
yeah,
a few years, and before you know it, you've got a few hundred records. Time flies.
yeah, yeah, exactly. You buy a record a week or two or something like that, but just like, or just don't think about it. Like, I mean, like, and that's the thing, is size kind of doesn't matter, like, as long as you're picking up things that you enjoy and you like and you're going to listen to, because I'm always getting rid. I used to, when I was younger, I was always like trying to, I don't know what was going through my head of like trying to amass some like diverse Library of Congress kind of idea of how I was collecting music. Like, I have to have a representative of all genres and like all these things, and I'm like, I'm not listening to half of this shit, so, and I mean, I appreciate it, but there's also certain things where I'm like, nowadays I'm like, do I really need to own this in my house? I'll still listen to it, but am I okay listening to it online, or where I don't need a physical of it? So I just try and keep it on. Do I throw this on in my house? Not like, would I listen to like this walking around? Would I listen to this at home? Would I take this out and put it on? And that's kind of where it allowed me to get rid of a ton of records. So
What is the difference there for you? What is the kind of difference between a record you'll just throw on when you're going for a walk, or one you'll actually want to keep as a physical kind of manifestation of it?
well, it kind of, I mean, I'm always listening to kind of something, just because in New York, you kind of walk everywhere. You're not like in a car or anything, and you're on the subway. I mean, it definitely crosses. I mean, I definitely listen to more what people would call difficult listening at home. I mean, it's just what I like listening to here. I mean, I play, whatever, but I definitely listen to, I guess, things I have to pay attention to more, or choose to pay attention to more. I listen to at home when I'm out walking around. It's more things I don't have to really kind of process as deeply, or things I've listened to a million times, so they're very familiar to me. I know them front and back. I'll kind of do that, and then frankly, I mean, past years, I mainly listen to podcasts when I'm out of the house and walking around. That's sort of my guilty pleasure. But I also listen to like the news on podcasts and stuff like that. Like in the morning, I listen to the New York Times podcast and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a good way of getting that information.
Yeah, yeah. It sometimes starts your day off a little stressful. Like it's not
Especially at
that
the
not,
moment,
I'm
yeah.
like, yeah, you'll like after 20 minutes of listening to the Times, you're just like, holy shit, the world's in peril. Like, and now I gotta like start the day. All right, great. So I try and take breaks from it, but I also listen to like, a bunch of, interview ones, and I don't know, I listen to like Planet Money, a bunch of NPR ones, like, things like that. And they're always kind of fun. I just like facts, so they're just kind of neat for that. So
Yeah. It's funny that we're in an era where, probably for the first time in history, that the spoken word is more powerful than the written word. Like what you're saying about the New
yeah.
York Times podcast, previously people would have taken that information in through a newspaper. Now it's a podcast.
I was saying something similar to that last week or something. I was talking about my father still reads the newspaper, and how he saw something in the newspaper. He was telling someone about something he read in the newspaper, and we just thought how funny that was. He still reads the newspaper. And then we got talking. I was like, hey, whenever I take the subway in New York, like 20 years ago, I'd be going to work, and the big thing was people would hand out these free newspapers at the top of the stairs in the morning. They're called like dailies, and they're just like a little 10-page mini newspaper, and they just kind of like yesterday's news. Essentially, it's like kind of crap. It wasn't anything really that good, but it was made to be read on the 20 minutes you're on the train, and then you toss it out when you're done. And how everyone in the train would be reading either a newspaper or a daily. It's just like how it went. And then I'm like, yeah, I've never, and I think I said something like, I saw someone reading a newspaper on the train the other day, and it like blew my mind. I was just like, whoa, I haven't seen anyone reading a newspaper in general. Like, but then I was like, oh, but my dad still does, he always talks about it.
I do quite like getting one sometimes. If you're kind of up on a Sunday morning, you go and get some coffee, you
Yeah.
get a newspaper, you go back home and read it. It can be quite a nice thing.
Really? You do that?
Not every Sunday. I'm talking like once every 6 weeks or something, maybe. Not at the moment with COVID, but I used to enjoy doing it, before.
Oh shit. Yeah, I never thought to do that. I might have to steal that your idea there. I might actually go out and get a newspaper just for the fuck of it. Because you're right, it is a nice break from all this. Like, but you're still staying informed, but it's actually nice to like read something.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny we've spoken about both now, collecting things and newspapers. Because did you used to kind of collect lists that a guy had scrolled out onto newspapers in a bookshop that you worked in?
Oh God, yeah, yeah. Oh, wow, you're really catching all these kind of obscure things. Yeah, there was a guy, and we didn't talk much. I tried talking to him a couple times. He wasn't interested in talking to me, or really anyone else for that matter. He was mentally ill. I don't know if he was homeless. I assumed he was, but I don't know where he went after. He could have been staying somewhere, but he would come in to the cafe, and he would be there all day, like 12 hours. He'd come in about 3, 4 times a week, and he would grab a ton of magazines, and he wouldn't deface the magazines or anything like that. And that's kind of why, at least on my end, I was just like, just leave him alone. Who cares? Like, you know what I mean? Like, let him do his thing. And he would have these the subscription cards that would come outside of magazines. You get those, or like pieces of newspaper that were already like kind of discarded and stuff like that. Or he would do it on those dailies that I was talking about, and he would write these very elaborate lists with years, front and back. And then sometimes there was like little like lines, like he was connecting something. And I always wanted to ask him because I found them obviously fascinating, but I thought they were really beautiful. Like I had a couple that I gave them to like a friend. Like one I gave to a friend as like a gift, and I was like, hey, I really thought these were really beautiful, like a drawing or something.
Yeah.
I looked at them as like artwork, and I really liked them. I mean, it was over 20 years ago, and I still have them. And I really like them. And every time I pull them out, I'm like just stare at them and think of them. They eventually had to ban him because I think I found out, if I'm remembering correctly, he was schizophrenic, and he attacked a kid. Like there was like a 4-year-old girl with her mother, and he had an episode and like pretty violently attacked the mother, and the little kid like started like punching a 4-year-old girl. I wasn't there that day. I just kind of heard about it the next day. And so he was, I guess, arrested or banned, or I don't really know whatever happened to him. But that was shortly before I quit working there. But for a good year, I just and when he would be done drawing them, he would, at the end of the night, you kind of have to tell him to leave. Like you'd be like, we're closing now. You've been here 10 hours. And he'd just get up and leave. Sometimes he'd mumble or something like that. And he'd leave. And he would put his magazines away, which I appreciated. And he would put everything away, but he would purposely leave his drawings, these list drawings he would make, in the middle of the table. Like he'd put his magazines away, he'd come back and put them on he would set them up you'd watch him set them up on the table, and they were like left there for whoever. So I started collecting them because he's like leaving them for, I don't know, it's like a present or a talisman, or I don't know really what his purpose was for doing it. And then I would collect them. And then other people that worked there knew I was collecting them. So if I wasn't there, they'd save them for me and give them to me.
Do you think he knew you were?
I don't know. Like I said, the couple times I tried speaking to him, he made it very clear he was not interested in speaking with me. or yeah, I was just like, okay, and I respected his boundaries. I didn't want to upset him, and but I liked what he was doing. I was a fan.
Have you still got them?
Yeah, I still got them. I'll always have them. Every so often, if someone likes them, I'm like, oh yeah, you take one. I have like a ton of them. So, but yeah, they're really nice. I enjoy works on paper and kind of these ephemeral lists and stuff like that. So it was like right up my alley.
That year we were speaking about, the same year you were kind of collecting those lists, that was the same year that Gibby, who you now run the label with, borrowed your copy of Clash of the Titans, I believe?
Yeah.
How long did he borrow that copy for?
I don't know, but he completely trashed it. Like, well, I think what he claims is his roommates trashed it. I let him borrow it, and then he had a party at his house, and I think someone used my DVD as a coaster or something like that. Yeah, it was like 2002 or 3, somewhere around there.
20 years ago almost.
Yeah, it was almost 20 years ago. Oh, 2003, I think. And yeah, so it was always an inside joke of because I remember when it happened or whatever, he was just like, because he lived across the street from me, like directly across the street. I lived at 92 Second Avenue was my address. I think I'm remembering that correctly, and he was at like 91 or 93 or something. Like our doors lined up directly across Second Avenue in the East Village in New York City. So I could come out, and if he was on his fire escape, we could just yell across Second Avenue to one another. But yeah, like I let him. I think I brought it over to watch, and we never watched it or something. And he lived in this house with all these like artists and various people that kind of owned a gallery below it called I think it's called Fuse Gallery or something like that. If I'm remembering it right. And yeah, they would always have people there and like kind of partying and stuff. And yeah, they ruined Which the old joke was the DVD was probably $3 or $2, but I was like, "You owe me it." He's like, "I'll buy you a new DVD," and then he just never did, and he did, and obviously because who cares? And then I think I made fun of him for not never buying me a new DVD, and then out of nowhere, it was like a couple years ago, like 4 or 5, maybe 4 years ago, I get this like random package in the mail, and it's a copy of Clash of the Titans on DVD. And he's like, "Sorry, it took so long to get back to you." And I was like, "You." It was good. Like that was a good delivery.
Were you kind of growing close at that point? Were you getting pretty good friends?
Yeah, we were pretty good friends. At that point, we had met briefly a few years prior in Boston. I want to say it was 99, 2000 ish. We had met, very in passing, like at a couple of the same parties in Boston, but we weren't like hanging out or anything. And then we kind of sort of reconnected, but really kind of were actually hanging out probably around 2002 or three, kind of around that time. And that's kind of how it was. Like we just had a ton in common, and then we just started like hanging out a ton, and we kind of ran in the same circles in New York. So the whole time we just sort of we were in the same room, multiple times a week. So eventually we were going to get to know one another, because even though New York's like 9 million people, it's a small town in certain other senses.
You're saying that to someone who's from a town of about 2,000 people, though.
What town are you from?
Kintore, or I guess it's maybe 3,000 or 4,000 now. Tiny little town in northern Scotland, Aberdeenshire.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. So up there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Way up in the north, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Guy on our label, Drew McDowell, he's from Paisley, but most of his time he lived in Glasgow for a good chunk of his life. He's from Paisley, So which is I guess right there.
Yeah, Glasgow's kind of the musical hub to a certain degree, I guess. I mean, there is stuff kind of going on everywhere, but it's just with the nature of it being a bigger population, I suppose.
Yeah. No, he actually lives near me now. He lives like on the other side of the neighborhood. We hang out pretty regularly. He's got amazing stories of Glasgow in like the late 70s, early 80s, like
some crazy stories, I imagine.
And stuff. Oh yeah, completely fucking insane. Like I'm just like, holy shit, it's a miracle he's alive. But wild as hell. Yeah, Glasgow's.
It's calmed down a little, I think.
Has it calmed down a bit? Yeah, I mean, I always kind of liked that about it. I was like, "Ooh, Glasgow, it's rowdy, cool." I really
it's still rowdy,
appreciated that. Cool.
I mean, imagine New York's the same. New York in the 80s compared to now would have been a little bit crazy, I suppose, maybe, or.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. It is a completely different place. I mean, it's a completely different place than 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Is like completely different. I wouldn't say it's still rowdy. It's a strange place, and the people, and if you live here, there is a certain level of just bizarre, absurd behavior that you just either put up with or ends up becoming kind of normal to you, I feel. And you definitely don't experience that really anywhere else. I mean, I guess every city's got their thing, but here it's just like it's a whole bizarre culture that just ends up in people's like kind of like DNA. It's like it definitely gets in your blood of like the how to act. I mean, I always feel that I mean, if you can, I don't mean make it as in like be a huge success and a star. I just mean like actually just live day to day. I mean, if you can make it, just like make a living, be an electrician or work at a bookstore, do whatever. But if you can just hack it, I think anywhere else, at least that I've been able to suss out, you'll be all right. There's definitely a lot of like, you got to figure out a lot of shit for yourself here. But there's also amazing amount of things at your disposal here. If you're resourceful, you would not believe that, the kind of wild shit you can kind of do here. You can get lost in the mix, and you can definitely And I'd say, I get this kind of impression in Los Angeles as well. You can create your own little world here and never really leave it. Like, you can create your paradise. You can certainly create your own hell in any of these places too. But if you really want to come here and fully immerse yourself, but also kind of make your own little world, it's doable. It's not even doable. It's kind of what everyone does. That's how you. That's part of the survival technique.
How do you feel that feeds into Dais?
Yeah, I mean, I was about to like say that it's like, well, it kind of doesn't, because since we've started this, Gibby's always been in Los Angeles. We started it when he had already moved, and I was here. I wouldn't say it was like that when we first started it. It certainly happened. Like it certainly became a thing. Like it definitely created its own like little microcosm that was not intentional, which is good, because nothing worse than when someone forces something, like, look what I'm doing, yeah, I'm creating this, and people come out there with like a whole mission statement, and it's great. I'm glad people have a plan and can do the thing, but personally I prefer things to happen like organically, and nothing is forced. I mean, the label has gone through so many different changes, and you know and so yeah, it just sort of kind of happened, and I think it was just based on the curation of the music that we were putting out. But there was, certain labels, they stick to like one or two genres of music, and you end up kind of, I feel like, painting yourself into a corner where you're just like, I'm stuck doing only this genre of music, and I kind of never want to have that problem, So, and I'm not gonna put out a ska record tomorrow or anything like that, but like, I definitely don't like to stick to when someone's like, oh, that's like a style of what Dave's putting out. I'm like, well, what is that? Like, like, because I don't feel like there's any kind of style, but there is definitely a bit of like a world like within it, and that people have floated in and out of, and that's great. And that it's not tied to one specific thing or nothing, or maybe someone can pin something on it, but like, you know I do like that it's fluid and that it can change and evolve, and you know take on new things, and that people can trust it, and to rely on it, be like, this might be something that's worth hearing. You know what I mean? Even though it's not something maybe we typically have done, but it's sort of in the wheelhouse, if that makes sense. Like, you know what I mean? It's different, but it's not drastically different. You know what I mean? And hey, I appreciate labels that, again, stick to, they're just like a metal label or just a hip hop label or whatever, and especially ones that like kind of document their own scene, and that's cool. I really like that, because it's good for someone like me when I want to hear what's happening in these things, and I'm always trying to like, kind of poke my nose in there, and see what other people are doing, and as a fan. But I don't think you need to really be genre specific. Like that. Do you know that label? And apologies if I'm butchering the name. Nege Nege Tapes out of Uganda.
I'm unfamiliar.
It's this label. It's out of Uganda. They kind of deal with like, this kind of music scene, their own scene in Kampala, or yeah, in there. But I know they've branched out into like other areas of Africa and in other cities and stuff. And it's all makes sense on the label. Like everything they've put out is absolutely amazing. There's not one even remotely bad record. It's like every record, I will buy it because I know it's going to be amazing, even though I have no fucking idea what it sounds like before getting it. I'm just like, yeah, I'll take it. Like, it's going to be my favorite record. I already know this. But when I have to tell people, like when people are like, oh, what's the stuff on this label sound like? I was trying to explain it the other time. I'm like, fuck if I know. You know what I mean? Like, every release is kind of all over the place, but it all makes sense in this little, I should say, little kind of world that they've created. and yeah, it definitely sticks with that region of Africa, but they're all over the place. And I think the more that they document what's happening there, that is now getting a chance to be heard outside of, this kind of closed off area, because everyone thinks out of music out of Africa, they're just thinking of, you know, that continental traditional African music and variations of that. Well, you know what? Kids living in the city and Kampala and stuff like that, that's not what they're really listening to. They're either probably listening to Western music or they're creating their own version of whatever they're into, using the resources they have and the influences they have. Obviously, they have a much different base of influence. And obviously, and like I said, like we were talking about earlier, that we're always these products of our environment. So when I'm listening to records on that label, I'm just like taking in so much of like these people that are products of their environment, and it's beyond inspiring. Like I'm just like, wow, like I'm so excited about what is happening just as a fan, just like, always keep it at arm's length because I just want to just voyeuristic. I just like love what the music is, and it's just like, wow, there's so much great music. And then I'm thinking, what else is out there that I haven't heard or I have no idea about, and that's always going to be the chase, and I guess that's why I live in an apartment of a million records. I'm constantly like, oh shit, there's these records being put out of God, wherever, and I'm like, great, let's check it out. Like, let's see what's happening there, and it takes some people like with a really good ear and a good sense of curation to start a label to put all that out, so I definitely like really really appreciate people that do have these kind of like, sort of visions when they're doing a label and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, I think, like you said, the thing with Dais is that although there isn't a specific genre, every artist in their own right has their very own individual kind of personal specific world that they exist in. And that's what kind of ties
Hmm.
it together, is that everyone has that for themselves.
Yeah, and and there is a level of, I mean, I'd say for the most part, everyone on the label somewhat knows each other in some capacity and are friends. And even people that weren't, like, that just kind of we sort of met along the way, entered up kind of becoming friends with people on, there's people on our label that did not know each other until they were both on Deus, and then they start touring together, and now they hang out, and now, what I mean? Now they're spending holidays together, you know what I mean? So it's just like, but they never knew each other beforehand, and that's kind of great too.
But making a community.
Yeah, it's definitely a community. And I don't want to speak for everyone on our label, but at least as far as I was concerned, that sense of kind of community definitely saved my life when I was really young, with like kind of counterculture and punk and things like that. My life could have turned out very differently. I definitely embrace that and appreciate it, and cherish it. And I'm glad that, it's still going, there is that kind of the level of it. Yeah, there's this kind of just that this weird sort of vibe. Everyone's got their own thing that they're doing. They're very independent, but we're all at the end of the day, like we all are like powwowing about like trying to create something, communally.
And I think that kind of DIY community spirit and attitude that we're talking about, it gives you a certain freedom as well to do really creative things. Like, who was it that did their album show like at an airport a while back?
Adult,
Yeah,
yeah,
adult. Yeah.
yeah. That show is pretty awesome. Just because you had to go to the
It's an
airport,
airport.
like, and
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't an airport. The funny thing is, it was inside a giant hangar, but you
Beautiful.
had to like park on a runway. So it's like, it used to be the main airport of Detroit, and then they built a new airport. I don't know how long ago. So that airport is now like a municipal airport, for people, I guess, that have like private jets or, or whatever, like local, like smaller flights or whatever,
For hire.
land there. Yeah, you would take a flight out of that airport. It's just like a county airport almost now, but it's a big airport because it was the airport for a while. They stop it, so they purposely, as a courtesy, like made sure there was no flights that evening. Ended flights early and allowed us to rent this thing out. So you had to park because there was a ton of people there. It was fucking a huge event, and you had to park on the runway. So like we're all just pulling these cars into this fucking runway, and then you go inside this giant hangar, and there was the show. Boy Harsher played, and yeah, Adult was playing, and it was amazing. And I just remember there was kind of like a false wall curtain kind of thing set up, and so you could see there was another part of the hangar, and I just kind of peeked behind it because no one was paying attention to it or guarding it or anything. And I just kind of like look over and I was like, holy shit, there's like two fucking planes over there. Like I'm just right on the other side of this curtain, and because it's a hangar. And I'm just like looking around at I don't know how many people were there. A lot. It filled the whole hangar. And I'm like, there's a lot of people here are drunk on drugs, partying. It's a party. And they're about 10 feet from just an airplane sitting right here. And I was just waiting for at some point someone, acid or something like that, to like commandeer an airplane.
GTA.
And I would see the airplane like pull out and everything. It would have been, pretty wild. But that never happened. It was actually smooth, very smooth, great event, no problems. And so, but I saw that airplane, I was like, oh shit. I was like, someone should have locked these up or put them somewhere else. Like, I guess they were hiding in plain sight. I think I was the only person that maybe noticed them.
Well, we're on the kind of topic of wild creative freedom and ideas. Who was it that etched Epstein didn't kill himself onto their record?
Oh, it was Raphael, or sorry. Yeah, it was in the Matrix. Yeah, that was that was kind of fun. It definitely sparked some controversy because everyone was like, yeah, fuck him, and I was like, well, he was murdered.
They've got a point,
and
yeah.
yeah, just kind of stating the obvious, and that sucks for the victims. It was more a statement of, this is, just when you think you got justice because he's dead, it's like, oh no, you didn't, because there's people above him. There was people. He wasn't the top of the totem pole.
That's why he was killed, because
was,
he would have spoken up.
yeah, exactly. 100%. That's it. And so that's what I think was lost on a couple people. Us putting on there's just a statement of, just because he's dead doesn't mean the underlying problem went away, or the not even the underlying problem is just that whole chain of events is still going on. It's just going on somewhere else. And I'm sure you're going to hear about another Jeffrey Epstein kind of character in another 15 years or God knows, how long. And it just shows you that, like, you didn't cut the head off.
Yeah.
With that one.
It's like, what's that Greek myth, where you cut the head off and two more grow back? The Hydra, is it?
Exactly. The Hydra. Yeah. You took that off, and about 10 heads probably showed up. So, that's what was on there. I didn't expect it to come out so clearly because they like stamped it in, the plant. I was like, oh, whoa, that's like,
it looked pretty clear.
It's bold. Yeah, it looked very clear. It's funny because we every so often we'll ask people if they want to do like a etching in the Matrix. And I don't know about you, but I was like, when I was younger, like kind of like punk and stuff like that, that was a thing. You would always get records and you'd always want to see what the message was, like etched in the Matrix. And it was always like something you totally didn't understand because it was clearly an inside joke with the people in the band or that made the record or whatever, and or a reference or something. So but I loved still reading them and like finding out what they were. And almost all of them had it on there. Like almost all of them had a weird, goofy message. And so, yeah, we always made it a point to try and do them whenever, people are into it, Tor Lundvall, our label, he always has etching messages, and they're always like some like a reference to like a joke with his brother or something, or like a family thing about like his childhood and stuff like that. There's like one that's all about talking about Micronauts, these like toys from the 70s and stuff like that, or like it's on, but he's always got like a line that references something. They're always very specific.
Is working at Dais a 9 to 5 job 5 days a week, or is it a 24/7 job?
Oh, it's 24/7. I mean, I have another job, like I work in entertainment law, so that's kind of what I do. And Gibby's and it, works in like ad tech stuff, which is also, which has a level of stress of just time, but it also adds a level of freedom. Is like, we don't have to make a living off the label, so we can take more risks and things like that when it comes to like cool ideas and things like that, or just try something out. Like, we're not like, oh, the bottom line. It's like, okay, yeah, we're cognizant of the bottom line. We obviously don't want to like drive ourselves into like financial ruin or something like that, or like drive ourselves into the ground, but we're able to be like, yeah, like we can have a little freedom with like trying out a new packaging idea and stuff like that. And because that is a risk, and if people aren't into it, and you're stuck with a huge bill and a ton of stuff, and so that is, but that ends up becoming, yeah, kind of a 24/7 thing. Like, at night, work on some stuff, or during the morning, it's kind of like all over. And then, I mean, in recent years, we were able to hire people. So we've been able to, now we have like a couple people that are on like a salary, and took a lot off of me and Gibby, you know,
Takes a little bit of the
which
weight
is great.
off.
Takes a little bit of the weight off, and that we can now focus on pulling together more ambitious projects, because we have the time, because we don't have to sit there, because before it was just me and him, and just designing everything and doing all this stuff. And I used to do the mail order out of here. I used to do all my own. I turned my garage into like a warehouse for a bit. That was nuts. And it just, the thing is, the label just wasn't slowing down or anything. It just, I was always like, well, we'll get on top, we'll get on top of it, and then I'm just like, I can't keep up, and it was just getting bigger and bigger. And it's not like, I guess we're sort of trying, but like, that wasn't the intention. It just was happening, and I was just like, shit, and then so now we got like all the mail orders handled at an outside warehouse, like logistics company, like that handles doing records. It's Whiplash, who makes their own cardboard mailers. And so doing things like that actually made things much better. Now we have a grasp on inventory, and like can do things like we can, yeah. And it also frees us up to do other things, because we're not like slaving away and going to the post office or any of that kind of stuff. I remember I got annoyed a couple of months ago, or like a month ago, because I had to go to the post office. I used to be at the post office. I was at the post office so much that the women at the post office invited me. One of them invited me to her son's graduation party. That's how well I knew her. She's like, "Oh, my son's graduated," and I was actually considering going, because she was like family, But I wasn't around that weekend. But like that's how much I went there. That's how close I became with the people at the post office. Like, we were friends. I would see them on the street, and they'd give me a hug and stuff like that. Yeah, we were friends. And so then I had to go to the post. I hadn't been to the post office in years, and I was like, like, I was like, and I'm like, and then I checked myself. I'm like, really, Ryan, you're fucking irritated right now. Like, you should be thankful you're only coming here like 2 times a year.
It's funny we touch upon the kind of slight financial side to running a label there. How do you kind of fund a label from the get-go? How do you get the financing to get something like this off the ground?
I mean, certain people have like financial backing and stuff like that, or like have a group of people. With me and Gibby, we truly didn't know what the hell we were doing, or where to start, or whatever. But I just asked some people, but to financially, I think me and Gibby we just split the cost, crossed our fingers, and hopefully we made our money back. It was a risk worth taking, but I think it was like we each put in like I don't know, like $1,500 or 2,000 or something like that. But it was all like spread out. It's not like I had like a lot of cash that much or something like that. It was like, okay, we're gonna get I got these tapes from the '60s. They're on reel to reel. Gotta get them transferred first. All right. I found a guy that transferred, just asked friends, I was like, where do I do this? Like, now it's, very easy. But back then it was like, I didn't know. I don't know how he's supposed to go about doing this. So got someone to do that. And then we just split the bill. You get the bill. Okay, we'll split it. And we each paid half and half. And then we would just be like, okay, now I got to get it, I guess, mastered. Like, yeah, all right, let's start there. And we split the bill. And so we did that with the pressing. And then when we got the kind of start getting money back on it, we just knew how much each of us had paid out. And then we just paid ourselves back. And we kind of did that for a while. Definitely the first few releases, because it's not like it made so much money that we could finance all this stuff, because we didn't make that many records. So we had a little bit, and we'd put it towards the next record, which was maybe a couple $100, and then we just do it over again. Okay, put that $100. I guess that will pay for mastering, but now we got to pay for pressing again, and we just did it like that, and we would just pay for it ourselves until things started getting a little more where it pay for itself, where the ball got rolling. So that's kind of how we did it. We just kind of, the first few releases, this is like 12-13 years ago, we would just kind of just split it and then pay ourselves back, and hopefully we would sell them all. There was a couple times where we were like, I think we're gonna have to wait a minute to get paid back on the money, and then still front. But like I said, me and Gibby had jobs, so we just save a little money or use our credit card and just do that. And then when it became like an actual like thing, when it became more of a serious label, we then had like kind of like the ball rolling, and we're getting like monthly distribution kind of payments and things like that. We were able to start a proper company and run everything through that. And then that just kind of just kept going. So we didn't really have like a lump of money at first, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people do, but we didn't. I don't recommend that as like business advice. But again, we had jobs, so it was a hobby at first. It was just this fun thing we wanted to do, and had access to some interesting, weird material that I was like, it'd be cool if it came out, wouldn't it? And then had friends making music. I was just like kind of like looked around. I was like, well, my friends over here doing cool stuff. I'm making music with my friend. I guess we'll put those out too, with this other weird stuff. And then Gibby's like, oh, you should see what's happening out in LA. So this other stuff, and it just kind of like one thing led
Snowballs.
to another. Yeah. And like you're not paying attention, and then all of a sudden it's 2021, and you're like, holy shit, what is all this stuff? But yeah, now it's like an actual business, and there's people that work for it, and so, it's all kind of spread out now and stuff.
I mean, you've come upon stuff as well, though, like a lot of the Burroughs stuff that you kind of put out hadn't been released at all before. You kind of discovered it lurking in vaults somewhere, right? Or
Well, no, the Burroughs record that we reissued had come out. It was a reissue of a record that came out on Industrial Records in 1981 or two, I guess 81. And I just had kind of a connection with that stuff, like a personal connection, a person that I managed for years. I started off working like kind of cataloging their archives and helping out with stuff like that, and then eventually became their manager for about 13 years. And they just passed away last year. They had initially put it out on their label. And I realized, and to me, I mean, I'm a fan of Burroughs and stuff like that, but a lot of the Burroughs records that come out, or when people are releasing unreleased things, it's just like more like kind of like audiobooks. It's either like an audiobook of him reading, which is fine, or it's like Burroughs mixed with like Kurt Cobain or some shit. And it's
Yeah,
like, I don't know,
what did
this
Cobain do
shit.
with him? Was it just Cobain kind of playing along to him, or what was the story?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I remember I got that record in the '90s at this kind of record store where I grew up. It had to be like 94, 95 or so that came out. And I remember being not that into it. I haven't listened to it in a really long time, but it's like I got it because I love Burroughs and stuff. So, but
Word collaboration.
yeah, you know, I guess maybe looking back on it now, maybe not so weird, but at the time I was just like, this is odd. Like, you know, it was,
It's a massive pop star collaborating with Burroughs.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so like I felt like a lot of the Burroughs records, were getting reissued or coming out. It was all this kind of stuff, and like the one record that, I mean, I had an original copy of it, was Nothing Here But Now But the Recordings, and that was, to me, the most. That was Burroughs. That was the most fascinating. It was the most. That record is all over the place. Talk about a record that has no genre. It's just like field recordings, him reading, sounds, edits, cut. It's just like, you're just like, what the hell is this? It's a totally bizarre record, and no one had reissued it. And yet I work with the person who not only initially put it out but edited the thing and like helped make it happen and went and did the work. So through that connection, I kind of was able to get the original master tape and like all these things, and worked with the Burroughs estate. James Garholtz was kind enough to send me the original master tape, and yeah, we finally got it to come back out after all these fucking years, which is great because, like, I get it. Records are rare for whatever reason, or cost whatever for whatever reason, and I'm not demeaning that, or what people want to spend on them or whatever. But I am happy to, with records like that. I think any kid should be able to walk in a record store and get that Burroughs record, because to me it's a game changer. It is a complete game changer. I look at it like, because I used to go, and obviously I've been collecting records since I was like, I don't know, 12, and so I would look at those expensive records on the wall where I was like, oh, I wish I had money to get those, like, because I know it's something cool or something like really something that I really want to hear, but I couldn't afford that. And then living in New York, when we were talking about working in that bookstore, there was days where I'm like, okay, I got $10 to eat for the next couple days, so it's going to be me eating, wonton soup for $1.25 at the place around the corner. It's you figure it out. But I still was loving records and music, and I would go into record stores and stuff in New York, and I'd see all these like records I would kill to have. It was just way out of my reach, and so, but then I'd get a little bit of money, I'd get like maybe like 40-50 bucks, and could go in and buy 2 or 3 records. I was thankful for reissues at that point, because I was like, oh cool, that record that's normally $200 I can get for 16 bucks now. Like, I can finally have it. And I'm now like, looking out for that kid, whoever they are can go in and be like, oh cool, that original Burroughs pressing, it's like $200 or whatever. Fuck that. So, let some rich person, or someone's got disposable income, not a rich person, but like someone's disposable income, can buy that one. You should be able to hear it, and you should be able to have a copy. And there it is for regular, normal retail price. Have at it. Let it ruin your mind. And same with a lot of the reissues we did. Cool. Like, and keep it in print. You should always be able to walk into a store and get a copy. And people, we've definitely gotten like annoying emails and messages, and people threatening, you're devaluing it. They're just gatekeepers, because they're just very nerdish, like the little that golem creature in Lord of the Rings or whatever.
Selfish, I
It's
think, is
just,
the word,
yeah,
opposed to nerdish.
yeah, yeah. It's very selfish, and you're just like, you don't own this. Like, you're just, what right do you have? You know what I mean? And like, and it's sad and pathetic. And so I'm happy to piss those people off by just being like, yeah, cool. I'm looking out for the people that actually listen to their records and like listen to the music, and and take it in and appreciate it. You know what I mean? You know, and those people generally don't have a lot of disposable income, so them spending $16 or $18 on just a regular copy of a record, that's a big deal to them. You know what I mean? That's maybe the only record they're going to get that month. And so, cool, I made that available. And that's why it's like people are, will get, you kind of can't win. You'll get criticized on everything you do. But, if you're like, you make all these colored vinyls and and they're limited and then they go for crazy money. And I'm like, we're not selling them for crazy money. I'm not on eBay selling things. We've never done, I'm not doing that. It's other people. I can't control what other people do. And the colored vinyls a bit more, and we try and like thwart people from like flipping them. We've definitely been proactive when we see people are clearly buying up the limited edition ones to flip, and we've like canceled their orders. We're like, no, like sorry, like
you can buy one.
You can buy one, or we're not. And if you keep doing it, you blocked from ordering from us, because that's fucked up. But I always tell people, no one's got a gun to your head to buy these like limited edition ones, because anything limited edition, we always keep a regular one in print. Like the black vinyl
still sounds the same.
Yeah, and as I always remind people, it's the same music. The same music's on there. Don't be a scumbag. Like, just how about listen to the record, enjoy it, like take it in. Maybe, you know what, be influenced by it and go make your own music, and like, or make your own art, or like be inspired and like do something else, like, with it. Always want to keep the black vinyl, or just, even those ones in print. And then people that want to collect the colored vinyls, that's great, that's cool. Hey, I like colored vinyl too. I got a bunch of really cool looking ones. And but I always want to keep the standard, the album itself. No, nothing else. The album is always in print. And then we can do all these other things to toy with it, because people like that. People are into it. People like the way it looks, or, or whatever. And I want to make those people, happy too. But I always want to keep, the kind of regular one. So yeah, I'm happy to make people upset that, I think there's actually on Discogs, on the entry for that Burroughs record, there was a guy trashing us, like you can leave like a review or a comment or something like that. Someone sent it to me. I never noticed it before. And it was amazing, because he was like, this label sucks, fuck them. They pressed this record more than once, and they did a second pressing, and fuck that, and then pretty much underneath it is just people like making fun of the guy. Like, you're just like, wow, you sound like a giant asshole. Like, you don't realize how much of a prick you sound like. You know what I mean? It was amazing. He like just, I was just like, oh good, that just like totally took care of itself. I was like, because it's like, who are you? Like,
print it and frame it, get it up in the office.
Yeah, it was a good one. And I think I even liked his comment where he's trashing us. I was like, I'm gonna like that too. You know what I mean? Just to be a snarky. It was cute. But
I mean, it comes back to the idea at the core of the label, which is Dais means to elevate, and whether that be elevating new music or elevating old music, it's about making it accessible and getting it into people's hands to listen to.
Yeah, it's getting it above. There's a lot of noise out there, and I don't mean the genre of music. I just mean in general, like societal noise. And there's a lot of like hooing and hawing, and like it's sometimes. I mean, fuck, there's so much amazing stuff that comes out that I completely miss. And I don't find out about it for a year or two. And it's just because there's all this noise and I'm missing things. And I mean, I'm happy when I find it, but if we can get people's attention on just one thing, like one release or something like that, where they're just like, I didn't even know about this. I mean, a lot of people follow the label, but there's a lot of people that just got really into one or two things on the label and they have no idea about the other stuff. But then sometimes we'll like point it out or profile it or whatever, and they're like, holy shit, I had no idea you were doing this other stuff, and I just found out about it. And even though they were a fan of something else, there's certain people that have are fans of the band Coil and have kind of know about us through that. But like, these are people that had no idea we existed before Coil, and a lot of people don't buy anything but Coil stuff. But there are some people that are just like, well, if they're putting out Coil, chances are I might enjoy some of these other things that I've never heard of. Sure enough, that's exactly what happens. They're just like, hey, I picked up this Dram Majesty record. It's just, I don't know, I liked it, or they pick up Hero Cone or Drew McDowell's solo records, so that would make more sense. But like, things like that. So like, cool, I'm turning on someone that probably hasn't really checked out new music in a long time, and now they're checking out new music. And hey, I like to point people in the direction of other labels, because me and Gibby are friends with a lot of people that have labels as well. Like, my friend Caleb does Sacred Bones and stuff like that, and we've worked with Sacred Bones a couple of times on like kind of collaborative, like, joint releases. And I'm always like, hey, if you like this, you should check out this thing on Sacred Bones. It's really amazing. Like, it's right up your alley. And either they know about it or they don't. And there's plenty of other labels. Like Ascetic House has got like a connection with us. We've worked with those guys on a lot of things, so it's that way too. Because that whole like kind of I don't see it as much, but that whole competitive nature that would come in these circles, I'm glad isn't a thing, because it was years ago, and I hated it. to get things above that kind of like noise level, and then through that disperse it into other avenues, is sort of, I guess, I shouldn't say sort of. It's definitely a strategy and a goal.